Okay, welcome everyone to the Remote.It Zero Trust Networking with One Line of Code webinar. Today we'll be going over some of our latest features and updates, so you know how to best take use of those and how to apply those to your use cases. Today we have two presenters, Robert Robo Ford, who's in charge of our DevOps, and Brenda Strech, who's in charge of our developer relations. Just a few housekeeping things as we get started. Everyone's on mute. If you have a question, please take advantage of the Q&A, and we will follow up with the materials afterwards in an email. So with that, I will turn it over to Robo.
Hi, everybody. As Davin mentioned, my name is Robert Ford, also known as Robo. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you Docker, and use that to kind of show some of our new device registration features, and as well as our new connection graph that we have. What I have here right now is you'll see my Remote.It desktop. I have signed in as a test user here. I have no devices. So the first thing I'm going to do here is click on the Add Device button, which is that blue cross at the top there. All right, and I'm going to select Docker here.
Robo, I'm not seeing your screen, I guess. Maybe
All right.
I can see the screen.
Okay, maybe my Zoom window fell behind. So go ahead, continue.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much, though. All right. So as you can see here, there's a Docker run command that's automatically generated with a registration code built in for your account, which includes the SSH service. What's new here is we have this add service button now. So you can add a quick service here for not just, SSH, but say HTTP. If you had an HTTP service you wanted to connect to as well from this device, you could add that service. You could also remove the SSH if you wanted to. But this way we can just go through and add services that we wanted. We can also now add tags. Tags are great for grouping and filtering. So if I click on that tag and I say webinar and I select webinar, I've already been testing, so it's there. You'll notice that this Docker run command kind of refreshed really quick. And that's because the registration code changed. If I add another tag, instead of the 9D12 there, if I add another tag, say, sales or something like that, and again, see that registration tag, the registration code just changes. So what I'm going to do now is just copy that. You can get a lot more information on our Docker image by clicking on this link to the Docker Hub page. And that has some production settings that you might want to set besides this basic run command, which is basically for development or demo purposes. I'm just going to paste that into my terminal here and hit enter. And when I do that, I get a Docker container running. So if I do a Docker PS, we see it's a Remote.It agent latest. It's running, it's got a name here. And what I'm going to do next is this is going to automatically register with our desktop. As you see here, this device registered, and since it was the only device, it got selected. Okay, so now we have our device here. That is the Docker container. It selected it from the device list. So if I go back to my devices, you see it here, and then I click on that, we're back in here. As you can see, it added two tags, the sales and the webinar tag. It also added the SSH and the HTTP service. This HTTP service doesn't really do much. I just added it to show an example here. There is no HTTP service that I'm going to connect to. But let's start with the SSH service. This SSH service, we have SSH running on our Docker container in our Remote.It agent. So this actually is a connection. Let's start with the service configuration. You'll see that we now have this connection graph up here. And you see this arrow pointing to the service end. When we select the service configuration now, it shows us what end of the connection we are dealing with. So when you talk about this service host being 127.0.0.1, that means it's from the remote agent, which is the Docker container in this case. And the service is the SSH service. That's the endpoint. So we're talking to the Docker container itself, and we're going to connect to the port 22 on that Docker container. And then that we just have the service name there. So let's go back and let's go back here and let's look at our connection configuration really quick before we start this. That when I click on the connection configuration, that now points to our local endpoint and our local agent. Our local agent in this case is really our desktop. So we're connecting from our desktop here to our Docker container here. We're going to use the SSH client here to talk to that, and it's going to talk to the SSH service over here. And we do that by just clicking the start button. And as you can see, it's starting up right now. And it is in an idle connection. So I'm going to go back over here and you see that we are now idle, connect on demand. And it's given me a local endpoint. This local endpoint, the 644E, whatever, -ssh at remote.it is just a DNS entry that we kind of make on the local host. It points to your local desktop host. And this port here is for, as you remember when we did the connection configuration, that port there is on your local machine on this section here. So if we go to configuration, we see that local port, we see that subdomain, which is the first part of that .at.remote.it, and it points to this section. So now we kind of give you an idea of where you're, what code you're working on and what you're seeing, what port is where. All right, so I'm just going to launch this. And as you can see, it has a URL of SSH URL of with username at that domain name. So it's going to prompt me for the username. I'm just going to type in root, hit enter. And as you can see, it brought up another terminal window here. And I'm in. Just like that, we are in our Docker container here. Okay, I'm going to exit that. Go back over here, and that's it. That shows a basic connection. So what we did now, you'll notice that the lines here have also changed. The tunnel before had a double dotted line. That meant that we were idle on our connection there. We weren't fully connected. Now that we're connected, it's turned to a double solid line. All right, so this means we actually have a full-on connection going between our local desktop agent using the SSH client, which was, the endpoint there, and talking to our SSH server in the Docker container. If I click disconnect, we go back to idle. You see the graph has changed again. It's now back to that double dotted line, showing you that it's idle. It's kind of up, but not fully up. We're not using any resources. We're not pinging anything. We're not using any network right now. All we're doing is it's ready so that if I just use it, so if I just type in SSH over here, and I paste in that URL that we had. So if I go to the endpoint here and I copy that, and I say root at there, what you'll see here is it starts connecting. You see this? It's connecting. Just using that tunnel made it come up. So it's coming up right now. It's connecting. And we're in over here. And in a second here, there we go. We're up and it's changed. So I didn't have to launch it through here. That connection is live. It's just there. And if you use that connection, it'll go live automatically. So, and that's it. That's, showing how we connect. The new connection graph we talked about. We talked about the new tags and adding services at registration. And you can do that for all your devices here that are listed in our add device section. You have the same thing. So if I click on Linux, it's generate a command. You have the same process here for adding a Linux device or a Raspberry Pi or an ARM virtual hardware, any of those. So at this point, I'm going to just stop right there and stop sharing and then give it back to you, Brenda. It's all yours.
All right, so today, let me start sharing my screen here. Today, I'm actually going to go over a lot of the organization features that are in the application. And these organization features to manage your users are supported in both the desktop app and the web portal. One thing to note is that Robo and I are demonstrating the new desktop and portal release that is due to come out this week. So if yours looks a little bit different, don't worry, it's going to get updated very soon. So let's talk about organizations. In my desktop application here, I am signed in as an account that's a playground account. I've already created an organization itself. And if you see here, I've got a playground account. I named it. I have the ability to also hook up to SAML integration so that I can have my users of my organization sign in with my org's domain controller. There's a little bit of setup to go here. You will need access to make sure that you can verify your account. I'm not going to set that up right now, but it's very simple, and we'll provide the links to the documentation on that. And then let's go over our different features that we have in the organization. So with different levels of your plans here, I can have different features on organizations. Every paid plan is allowed to have roles, and roles, though in a professional plan, are locked down to no access, member, and manager. You'll see here that they are locked and they're in blue. So no access means that you can put somebody in your organization and they don't necessarily need to be licensed. That is the state that they will go into when they first register with your organization, and they won't have access to any devices or networks. And then a member is allowed to have access to see the device list and to see all the services and connect to them. A manager is allowed to not only view and connect, but they can also manage devices, which means they can register new devices, edit the services and device itself, delete them, share and transfer the devices themselves. In addition, with a business plan or an enterprise plan, you get to be able to customize roles. And a role is simply a set of permissions. So I can also delegate the administration of my organization, which includes the tags and members of my organization. And how that gets powerful is that I can also create access based, and all would be access to all devices. Tagged, though, is where we get into the zero trust. So I can add that access is limited to specific tags, and it can be a combination of tags or single tags. It can be a match on any or all. So this would be an or statement, and this would be an all. So if I created a tag and a role, let's see here, this is webinar, and I can create a tagged role, and I can toggle the different switches that they might be able to do. So I'm going to save that there, and you can see I have a lot of different roles. And then if I were to want to manage the users and their roles in the organization, I can go here to my members and add new members based on email addresses and pre-assign a role. Or if they've already been assigned to my organization, simply change their role. And I have a pre-set up user here. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. And I'll go ahead and sign it the webinar role here. And the webinar role, if we look at it, is going to deal with devices or networks that are tagged with demo. And as you can see, it picked up that there's one network and 0 devices that are tagged with this. This is powerful so that you can assign only access to specific services. So for example, if you have support techs and you only want them to have access to HTTP services on IoT devices, or specific admin websites or applications that you might want to give them access to, but not open up to the full world. And let's go here to my user. Let me refresh it. And as you can see, let me finish, let it roll. So this device, I'm signed in as this bstrech@gmail on my browser here. And I don't have any access to any devices, but I do have access to a network. And that network was set up by tagging specific, signing specific services to networks. And in my organization here, I can simply go in and tag specific services, adding them to whatever networks I want to. And services can belong to multiple networks. So it's rather, flexible here. And we, based on what Robo was showing, you can pre-tag devices as well. So here I've already got just access to the networks, and I'm going to go ahead and make a connection to one of the services that is contained within that network. When I click connect, it's the same thing. However, you'll notice here, I'm using a browser, and therefore I'm not actually using a connection between the Remote.It daemon on my desktop and the target service here, which is the SSH. So I'm actually going through a proxy server here. So that's why the URL looks different. If you want persistent connections or a URL that you can use over and over again, you should use the desktop app or the CLI. These kinds of connections will last for 15 minutes of when there's actually, once there is 15 minutes of inactivity, the connection will stop. Also, it will stop at 8 hours max. So if I look here, one thing I wanted to mention here on connection configuration, you can also change a connection configuration from a URL. And in this case, it's SSH. So most browsers know how to interpret an SSH connection and open the appropriate application. You can also change that to command to open whatever application that you want with the configurations. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this connection. And as you can see now, I'm actually connected to this SSH service. I can run multiple connections to different services here. And let's see, I'll pause here for any questions if there are any questions here on the organization or networks feature and any permissions that are involved here. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to demonstrate here is a feature, which is our APIs. We use GraphQL for our APIs. We do have documentation, and we'll be providing that link as well. I'm going to use an application called Insomnia, which is very similar to Postman. If you're already familiar with Postman, or if you're already familiar with Insomnia, then you're good to go. But I do have a collection of sample queries that are up on GitHub that is linked to also from our documentation. And as you can see here, oops, I'm trying to show you all the different types of things that you can do. So pretty much anything that you can do in our portal application, you can do with our queries here. Note that there is a connection set of queries here. This connection set of queries is to create proxy connections. If you would like to make peer-to-peer connections with the proxy rollover, then you would use the CLI and or desktop and make connections directly. And the CLI is useful when you have, say, two servers that you want to connect to each other, and then you can make the CLI from one machine to connect to a Remote.It daemon on the other one. So if the other one doesn't need to make connections to anything else, you can install just the device package. But as you can see here, we've got everything from managing your organization, your accounts, registration and device recovery. So that is a feature that we didn't mention that is coming out with this new release, is that if you ever need to recover a device, for example, you are, especially with IoT, or you needed to bring down a server and you want to bring it up again with the same configurations and as the same device, with all the device, with the history and everything, you can use the registration recovery code to then, it's very similar to the add device code that's generated here, only it's specific for basically creating that same device again. Now note, if you try to do this on a device and the other device is still up and talking, you will create a conflict. You'll end up with the second device and the original one will go offline. Then is there any other questions here? You'll note that the queries here look very JSON-like, and the responses are JSON in responses. And you can add as much stuff as you want here. So if I wanted to add, and sorry, my Insomnia here is not doing the autocomplete, but typically when you use Insomnia here, you can inspect the schema, and which is, I'm not sure what happened here, but you can show the documentation, and you can have autocomplete here, either by hitting the tab space, or if you start typing in it, it'll start matching the different attributes that are allowed to be returned in the query. So we also do have examples of the authentication that's required for in any GraphQL API. We do use access key and secret, which is much more secure, because then you don't have to worry about leakage. You can just deactivate the key without worry that you've completely deactivated the account. It also is resilient through a password change on your account. The access key and secret will still remain active. So access key and secrets can be managed in your account section over here. You can create access keys and secrets here. Note, your secret is only displayed once, so make sure you create a copy of it and keep those for yourself. Any other questions here? All right, so Devin, I'm going to let you take over again.
Okay, well, thank you for everyone's time today. If you don't have a Remote.It account, please go to the website Remote.It. You can sign up. There's a free account. You can try everything out and let us know how it goes. If you already have an account, hopefully this helped you kind of see what's new and what you can do with our new release. As Brenda mentioned, the new release will be out later this week, so you will get that as an automatic update. But just stay on the lookout for that. And as I mentioned previously, we will be sending out a follow-up email with links and things like that to help you out. So thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.